Thanks for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Metro Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram of Chicopee. Visit their state-of-the-art dealership next to BJ's and Big Y on Memorial Drive, or check them out online at metrojeep.com. If you like the show, be sure to follow, subscribe, share it with everyone you know. Give us a big fat review whenever and however you can. And be sure to follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to find out about what's coming up on future episodes, just like this one, with my guest Tom Kanach on Baxy's Musical Podcast.
What is it? What is it?
It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
You know, when I started this podcast a couple years ago, I thought, hey, you know what? I know a thing or two about music. Maybe I'll record a couple interviews, toss them online, see what gives. And so far, so good. I was able to book a couple of interviews with some of my favorites, and that's been a great deal of fun. But you know what I discovered? There's still a part of me that gets all jacked up about hearing something new. Even if it's just new to me, there's something amazing about the process of discovering something. Like when I was a kid, rifling through the bins of my favorite record store and stumbling across something that was awesome. Something that I might have missed had the guy behind the counter not been blasting it while I shopped. That's how I feel about today's guest, Tom Kanach. Tom is a singer-songwriter from New Jersey who's been releasing music for a number of years, and it's all been very good. But it's only been recently where I started to really pay attention to Tom's work. And after a few years of releasing a lot of stuff as a solo act, he's now formed a new band. The name of his new band, called, strangely enough, is KANAK. It's a band that features Johnny Rayo, who played with David Johansen, and Sylvain from the New York Dolls. It also features guitar player Steve Wood from Dramarama, plus longtime collaborator Joe Rowley and drummer Steve Brown. And their latest EP, which came out just a few months ago, was produced by Ed Stasium, a guy who's produced or engineered a few people that you might have heard of, like the Ramones, the Talking Heads, Living Colour, Motorhead, the Smithereens, Soul Asylum, and I could go on for days and days. But the selling point here isn't just who was involved in making the EP. What's really important is the EP happens to be really damn good. So in a way, this is me curating and introducing you to music that you should probably listen to. Because here's a situation where amazing things are coming together and producing something that's really quite special. And among the manager's recommendations for this week is On the Outside, the latest EP from the band KANAK. And I think you're going to like it. This is my conversation with Tom Kanach from KANAK on Baxy's Musical Podcast. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. I'll get right into it. I've been listening to the new EP On the Outside. I think for the last couple of days, I've really enjoyed it. I also went back and listened to some of your old stuff too, and I know you've released music as a solo artist for quite some time, a couple of years now. But this is the first time you've released something as a band. How did that happen, and what was the decision behind it?
So I had taken a break from doing any music because I had 4 kids in the early 2000s, and I wanted to devote some time to that, and I took some time off from music. Then I had started to write a bunch of songs, despite trying not to write a bunch of songs. And so I put together a project and had a bunch of studio guys come in, and I really hit it off with that bass player, Joe. He was the bass player on Undertow, and after that, we kept playing together, and then we added a couple of other guys. We added Pete from Dramarama came in and was playing some stuff. And over time, it just went from being those guys interpreting my thing to all of us working together to be a band. We added Steve Brown on drums, and we added Johnny Rayo on guitar, and it felt different. It felt like a band. And you can tell by listening to the old stuff versus the new stuff, it's a lot less me demanding everybody play like it's power pop Beatles, to everybody having a little bit of an input. So it really truly is a band now, where it was sort of a dictatorship before, but a good dictatorship, the best kind.
Do you prefer it that way? I mean, is it nice to not have the say in everything, or is it nice to have more of a democratic process?
I find that the songs are better with the democratic process. It's just a lot more aggravating to get there. A lot of back and forth. Would I love to tell everybody what to do? I think maybe, but the songs usually suffer for that, because it's usually only what I hear and what I'm thinking versus all of the other things that these guys have listened to over their lifetimes and brought the 9,000 years of music listening brought together. So
Well, I mean, they sound terrific. I mean, you mentioned Peter
thanks.
and Johnny, who played with Johansson, and Sylvain from the New York Dolls, and it's a hell of a collection of musicians that I mean, I imagine just the influences alone just have to affect everything that you guys wind up recording.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because there's three guitars. I play rhythm and I write, I play guitar and I write a lot on guitar, but when we got together, it was really hard to figure out who was going to play what and not everybody playing the same thing and just making a giant wash of noise. And when we went out to Ed's at Stasium's to record this project, Ed really helped us to each come up with a part and made us work really hard and not be lazy. And that really helped. So what Pete plays is like a really cool Keith Richardsy type of thing, and what Johnny plays is sort of like a Chuck Berry kind of thing, and what I play is something very rhythmic in the middle, and it works out pretty well. It took about a year and a half to get to the point where we were very fluid with playing three guitars, so it's cool.
Yeah, I love the opening track Outside. I loved Not Right Now. I really liked
thanks.
Without a Clue. I mean, it reminded me a lot of the Smithereens in a way, and I mean that as a total compliment in the best way possible. And it's interesting that that it would be Ed Stasium who would produce this record, since he worked with the Smithereens and a ton of other people too. Tell me about working with him. I've known other people that have worked with him and said that he's a guy that knows exactly what he wants to do, and he will do whatever he can to make sure that you're following in line. Is that the experience that you had with him?
Ed sort of. So first of all, he's a Jersey guy. We're from New Jersey as well. So we're all very sarcastic, and the sense of humor was all in line. I mean, the very first time we were setting up, Steve, the drummer, asked for more snare, and Ed said "F you" to him over the speaker. And it was the first time we were nervous because it's Ed Stasium, and we're all sitting there, and he goes, "No, F you." And then that was all he said, and he's like, "Okay, go." So he was good. He became like another member of the band. And it's funny, Without a Clue is the song that he really had the most input into. He made changes in the chord progressions and some other things, and added some other things in there, put the acoustic in there for it sort of sounds chimey in the beginning. But I'll take the compliment about the Smithereens, because that's a band that I love, whether I'm from New Jersey or not. Those are great songs, a great band. I just actually recently saw them, and they were really good. So
is that with Marshall Crenshaw playing with him, or?
Yep, yeah.
That's a great combination, by the way. I think
It
it's
is.
so awesome that he's doing that. But no, I agree with you. I'm not a Jersey guy, but I've been a big Smithereens fan for a long time. So, like I said, when I see someone who's doing something that's similar to the Smithereens without aping the Smithereens, that's a big compliment. So, how did you get involved with Ed Stasium? How did that even come about?
So I think in the 1930s, Ed did a record with Johnny, and they knew each other. And when we were talking about who was going to produce this, because there's five guys in the band, and everybody is really an experienced musician with an opinion, and so we really needed somebody, we felt, to come in and be the referee, if you will, or the coach. And we talked about a bunch of different people, and Johnny said, "Hey, Ed would be great. He does like great rock and roll guitar bands." I'm like, how would anybody even get in touch with Ed? He goes, "Oh, I know him." I'm like, "Well, you probably should have said that earlier." But Johnny sent him a message, and he said, "Send me the songs." And we sent him the songs, and we got on a call, and he loved the songs and was willing to do it. And so we flew out to California and did a couple of weeks out there with him, and did the songs. I wish we would have had more time to do more songs, but he was really in the middle of doing a bunch of stuff. He was actually starting that the remix of Tim that he did. That's brilliant. I don't know if you listened to that. That's the Replacements record that the Replacements themselves always sort of hated the mix of. Ed's version is amazing, magic. So it was really cool. But so he was really busy. He squeezed us in between, and we spent a lot of time with him. Funny guy, really nice guy. Just a good person.
It's interesting to me that and you're not the first person I've talked to about this, is about the idea of releasing EPs. I mean, more and more people are releasing EPs now as opposed to a full length record. And from the artist's perspective, I kind of understand it on a lot of different levels. I mean, you have probably more than enough songs to release an album, but by spreading them out over a period of time, I mean, you're extending the cycle of releasing music. And in a way, it's a good business decision more than maybe even a creative decision. Tell me about that choice for you guys, about releasing EPs and how it works for you.
So I write a lot. I mean, I write songs. I write songs every day. I probably won't live long enough to demo all the ideas that I have. I'm working on being cloned, so hopefully that'll help. But
It's a tough problem to have.
it is, and I tell people like other musicians out, and they're like, "Yeah, go to hell" or whatever. But I always want to put as many songs as possible. I don't know if you saw that Undertow record I did, at 30 songs on
Yes.
it. And that was a whole concept behind it, so the 30 songs made sense. But we were out to dinner, our manager Pete and I, and out to dinner with our friend Matt Pinfield. And Matt's like, people have a short attention span, and good songs get lost on big records. And I walked away and said, he's right. And so he said, put an EP out every 3-4 months. You can really work every song on there, or almost every song on there. It's faster turnaround to get it out to market. It's a smart business decision, like you mentioned, and we decided that that's true. And people have a short attention span. They want something, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And we had previously put out something, and we only worked one song off of it. And the other songs that we also felt were strong got sort of lost in the shuffle. So we felt like this was the smartest thing to do. 5 or 6 songs every couple of months. In fact, we're going back in the studio in a couple of weeks. We're working on that right now. We're writing the new record right now. But so it is a conscious decision to be able to put a snapshot together of who we are at this moment, get it out faster, and have the ability to cohesively work it all.
I may be going out on a limb here, but it would seem to me that if you released an EP with less songs, but they were good songs, like you say, you have a better chance of working on it. But I would imagine with streaming the way it is now, if you start and release an EP and the first song is great, it's likely that you would get more streams on song 2, 3, and 4 than if you would just, like you say, release a full length record by song 9 or 10. It's over and never listened to.
Right. I have had the experience where I had one song that got 10,000 listens and one of the other songs on there got 30. And I might have liked that song with 30 listens a lot more than the one that got to 10,000. But this allows us to do that, and it also keeps us moving forward, like artistically. Like I've been in a situation where you did a record and it took a year to do the record, and the first 3 songs were written before the record and the last 3 songs were written at the end of the record, and it sounds like 2 different bands. And it's when you've only been together a short period of time, and we've only been together a year or so, maybe actually almost 2 years now, but we've developed and changed a lot in that short time period because we're like sort of finding our way. I'm confident now that we're in a pretty good groove. Before that, we were sort of still figuring things out.
You mentioned Matt Pinfield, and I noticed that he had written a really good introduction on your website. It's really nicely done, and I know he's been in your corner for a while. And tell me about your relationship with Matt.
So I was in some earlier bands in New Jersey that were releasing records and cassettes and CDs back in the day. And Matt was found one of our songs, liked it, and was an early champion of all of that. And Matt's always really supported local bands and gone out of his way to try and get them airplay. But when he was on WHTG, they used to play. I was in a band called Well of Souls, and they used to play Well of Souls all the time. And we had a song that we got major label interest because of the amount of airplay that HTG played us for. So it was really cool, and I developed a relationship with Matt, and we've been friends for a really long time. And he's always very honest and supportive, but honest. I mean, there's been times I've taken things to, and he's been like, I don't, that's next. So
but that's the basis of any good relationship, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about Well of Souls, and obviously your musical background goes back even further than that. Tell me about where music comes from. Is it a musical family you're from, or where does it stem from?
So my dad was in a doo-wop band in the 50s, and my mom was in a choir, and they both sang, and there was a lot of music around the house. Buddy Holly, Sam Cooke, the Four Seasons, and folk music. my mom and my dad encouraged me to sing until my dad realized that I should get a job, and he's told me, "You'll never get anywhere. Just listen to the Beatles." But when I was a kid, music really was an escape for me from the things that went on in my life. My parents had a tough relationship, and my dad wasn't always the best person, and music to me was the place where I could go and I was safe.
Mm.
And I started to play guitar and taught myself piano when I was 4 or 5 years old. I started playing and started writing songs. I mean, those songs are, interesting. My rhyme scheme's gotten hopefully better. But it was always an outlet for me. Every time there was a family function and we went to my grandparents, she had an old out of tune player piano in the basement, and I would just make a beeline for down there, antisocial, go and play until it was time to eat, and then and do that. But I always wrote songs, I always played, and I was really into the Beatles. I was into all British Invasion, the Who, the Stones, all that. And one day I met a kid who was in a rival high school gang. He was in the punks, we were the rockers, and there was no name tags or anything, just a loosely named group. And he was in the bathroom and he was listening to music on a Walkman. And I'm like, "What are you listening to?" And he's like, "Check it out." And it was Sonic Reducer by the Dead Boys. And my life changed right there. He played bass, I played guitar. And that afternoon we formed a band called Mischief. And I was in Mischief for I think 7 years. And we played a lot. We toured, we did played the Lords of the New Church. We did a lot of really cool things. We had the fortune of meeting a lot of those early New York punk guys, in becoming friendly with them. We were like little mascots to them. And I've talked to other people who were in a similar situation, like Michael Lago. Something similar happened to him. But we were friends with Stu Bader when we were kids. We would lie to our parents and say we were sleeping at each other's house, and we would go to the city and try and find a place to stay that night. If not, we would sleep in Penn Station in the phone booths when you put your knees against it so no one could get in. Actually, the old phone booth, which doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in the city when I was 15, 16 years old, listening, going to see punk bands and seeing, Suicide and the Heartbreakers and, Johnny Thunders and, a lot of those early, right after Max's closed in the late 70s was when I started going. So it was a really great time. And I look back on it now and I think, like I hung out with the Ramones, I hung out with Billy Idol. I mean, it was pretty cool.
It's funny because I interviewed Cheetah Chrome about a year and a half ago.
Oh, he was great.
He was absolutely freaking awesome. But we talked a lot about Stiv Baders, and I have other friends that were very close to Stiv too. First of all, it's almost impossible to imagine that he's been gone for 34 years. I mean, that's
Wow.
amazing to me. But he has, and
Wow, that's awesome.
but he's like one of those guys that to me like one of the greatest front men of all time, and I wish people could have had the experience of seeing him play or seeing him basically own a stage in very much like an Iggy Pop type of way. But tell me about Stiv and your experience with him and what he was like to have as a friend.
So he was on stage really intense in a way that I loved, and I asked him about it on occasion because I sang and I wanted to be more of a showman, more of a front person. And he told me you just tap into whatever that feeling is and let that light shine through. And that's always been really great advice. But it's funny because off stage, he was funny and charming and sweet. And, we would have, deep conversations about what books he was reading and those sorts of things. He was like a really nice person. But again, with music, for the most part, musicians that are truly musicians that love music, usually are inclusive to the people that are coming up and helpful. And he was definitely that. He and Brian James was in the Lords at the time as well. And he and Brian were both really nice to a bunch of young kids who were asking way too many questions.
Yeah, I would imagine if you have access to like a Brian James and he must be asked about New Rose every single day of his life. But you're talking about two guys who you should be more appreciated for what they accomplished. And Brian James is like one of those guys. Absolutely. Like, how do you diminish what that guy accomplished? I mean, it's just an amazing songwriter, musician.
Yeah, and a huge influence on. So I when I was in Mischief, we were a three-piece, and I played rhythm, and then I would solo. And I bought the same guitar as Brian. I bought the same amps as Brian. I mean, I really modeled myself. He's probably my biggest guitar influence. to my playing, not to music in general, but to my playing. And I loved it. I got to know him. I got to play guitar with him one time. We were at his flat in London, and we broke out guitars and we played. I was stunned. It took me forever to figure out, like, oh, what do I do? Because I was, frozen, but because it was Brian James. But he was really gracious, nice person, very funny, very British, in my opinion. You know, it was very cool. It was for somebody young to be able to hang out with people like that. It made me feel like these people have integrity, they're good people, and they're true musicians. And if they can do it, then maybe there's a shot that I could do it.
So, as a young kid, when you have access to guys like this, and I assume that you say, "Hey, listen to what I've got." What was their reaction? I mean, they must get that a lot from a lot of people, but obviously they certainly tapped into something pretty important with you. I mean, how were they reacting to what you were showing them?
So I don't know why, but Joe DiLorenzo, who's now who is some involved in the management of the Damned at this point, which I saw him the other day, and we were high school friends. He's the kid that was in the bathroom listening to Sonic Reducer, and we were in a band together for years and years and years. And we would go back to his house. We listened to the Damned. We were like, oh my god! And now he's friends with all those guys and knows them and is on the road with them, which is crazy to me. But we thought it was probably an overstep to ask them about any of our songs. But I will tell you, my favorite thing is. Joe and I wrote a song called "Rotten to the Core," which was a snotty kid punk song about, you can go ahead and, bite the apple, but there's no substance to it. It's rotten. I mean, that was the gist of the song, right? And I don't know if you remember Danny Ray from Shrapnel.
Sure.
Danny produced it and in the studio with us, and Danny played it for somebody for the Ramones. And my favorite memory of all time of my music is Joe Ramone saying "Rotten to the core, man, rotten to the core," and giving a thumbs up. And that was, the only time. Like Brian had a tape of ours because Brian was gonna produce us. And we went to London to meet with Brian to talk about producing us, and he had a tape of ours. And he liked the music, but I never played it for him in front of him. I was always way too nervous about that. It's almost like dropping your pants. You know what I mean? Like, hey, take a look at what I got. What do you think? To me, it's very personal, and I almost never want to see anybody's reaction to the music. I just want to pretend that they listened, they liked it. Now we don't have to talk about it.
So let me ask you this, because you now, because you write a lot of songs and you have a band and you've been producing music forever. Do you still feel that kind of insecurity about the songs you write? I mean, they're great songs, but I mean,
Thanks.
they're still, it's still something that you kind of have to trust the person hearing before you can present it to them. Do you still feel that way?
It's always a little bit of a struggle for me because I think like every single person alive, everyone's a little insane. I may have, hogged more of my share of insanity than some other people, but I am still a little insecure about it. When I write songs, I could never write. We had the opportunity one time when I was back in a band called Well Souls to write songs for a famous heavy metal singer from Germany, a woman, and I ended up singing backing vocals on her record and everything, and she was great, very nice, but none of my songs got accepted because I couldn't take it seriously. It felt stupid to me. I could never write a song like that I didn't feel. And then it goes back to what Stiv had said, like it has to come through you, the song, not, from like outside. And so all of my songs are so detailed, so deeply personal to me, so intensely connected to something that I feel or felt that it is still like dropping my pants a little bit.
But on the other hand, I mean, I know some people that write songs for other people.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different challenge, because
Yep.
if you write something personal, it may not be applicable to the person performing it, and
Right.
and that's really hard to get beyond. You must feel that way too if you're writing that personally.
I absolutely agree. And it's a different skill set, and some people have both that skill set where they can imagine writing for somebody else and whatever. I can't. I mean, maybe it's narcissism. Maybe I should think about this. But I really have to feel it. We and Johnny and Joe write songs and bring me songs to put lyrics to, and I have to find the songs that are successful. Like "Disguise" is a song Johnny wrote. I had to find the lyrics. I had to find something in it to connect to and write the lyrics. And we did a lot of back and forth where Johnny hated a word, and I was like, "Oh, then go to hell." And then we had whatever. But eventually, I realized it's a really personal song for me. It's about people are going to see through your phoniness, and it was really personally written about something in my life, but I didn't realize it until later on when when we were in the studio recording it. I was like, oh shit, this is about that. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can curse.
You can all fucking day.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I've been trying not to. I have a potty. But I realized that it was really about something that happened in my life, and I was like, huh. So now Johnny wrote a song that's called "Impossible" that I think we're going to record. That's definitely going to be on the next record. To me, it's probably it feels like a hit to me.
Mhm.
It's a really great song, and the lyrics just came to me because I felt a feeling when I was listening to it that I could connect to, and it has to be that way for me. Now, maybe if I was writing a song for somebody big and I could imagine what it was like and I could feel a universal feeling, maybe that works. But you mentioned the song Outside. Outside to me is a feeling that I always feel like an outsider. And I think, yes, it's probably universal that most people do, but it is a very personal
Right.
song that I was feeling in a situation.
So when you write music, I mean, are you the kind of writer that hits on a song and has to complete it, or are you the
Yeah.
kind of guy that would go back and work on it later or abandon something if it didn't feel right?
So I thank God for the invention of a cell phone, because I used to have to use a micro cassette recorder with me all the time. And it's a funny story about Outside. The song was originally written a long time ago. I don't even remember when, but the tape got warped.
Ugh.
And when I went to play, every once in a while I'll digitally convert tapes of when I remember, or when I'm frustrated not writing anything, I'll put I'll put those tapes into digital and I'll go back and listen to them. And the song was like down, 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 and then it went row, 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 and that's the melody line. Like I'm like, oh, okay, I'll write a song with that. And I wrote it. That came pretty quick. I always fine tune the lyrics. I really care about lyrics. I'm always trying to figure out the best possible wording to say. It's almost to the point of crippling. But I'll be with a pen at the music stand in the studio. Hold on, don't record the final vocals. I want to change this word. So to the very last minute, and then live with it. But I don't usually write complete. There's a song that we have that's called Out of the Blue that I had a dream about and wrote the whole thing in the dream. And when I woke up, it was the whole song. So, and I really didn't change too much. But most of the time for me, I'll come up with a part and I save the parts. I have a very elaborate, OCD process of putting songs in places where I go back and review. And I'll go back and review them and see what strikes me. I have thousands and thousands of ideas that are in a folder. And, if one of them speaks to me today, I'll work on that one.
And you've backed all these things up, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My day job, I do IT work, so it's in the cloud, it's on a hard drive, it's on a backup hard drive. Yeah. So
the band is going to be touring throughout the rest of this year. In fact, I think you're coming to Boston in October on the 12th of the Square Root. Are you expecting to schedule more dates, or do you like the pace as it's laid out right now?
So we are doing a slow build. I have a 1-year-old, for example, a daughter, and she's insane as well. But so doing it slow to start off in a build is good. It took a while to find the right guys. It took a while to find the right formula for us of what felt natural. And so now we're just going to start playing, and everybody's sort of, Johnny has some other stuff he does. Pete's in Dramarama still. So, we sort of work around all that. But I think for this year, with the studio thing that we're going to go do again, with Kurt Reel from the Gripweeds. I don't know if you know Kurt. He mixed the record. He's going to produce the next one. We had a really good experience with him, and it was real fun. So he's going to produce it. And so doing that, I'd rather focus on getting, new material than playing a ton of shows. But I have a feeling that by end of this year and going into next year, it will be a much heavier, touring schedule for us.
That's great. Well, Tom, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Like I said, the EP is awesome. Can't wait to hear.
Thanks.
Can't wait to hear more stuff whenever that comes out. Do you have like a time frame about when?
Yeah, we think early August it'll be done. We're as fast as we can get it done. But we have, 25 really good songs, and now, let the games begin. See, this is where we need a referee, because it'll be like, everyone will have a different favorite 5 songs. You're like, what the hell? So
Yeah, but patience will dictate all that stuff. So it's a good plan. Tom, it's great to talk to you. Have a great day. I really do appreciate
Thanks.
it. Take care.
No problem. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.
The name of Kanach's new EP is called On the Outside. It is available now, and the next EP is coming out next month. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like it, share it, rate the hell out of it. Tell everyone you know that you heard it. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for regular updates. You can also email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. And thanks to Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee, but most of all, thanks to you for listening to Baxi's Musical Podcast.